Okay. Let's transition yet again. On August 28, 2012, Abilene police responded to Dyess Air Force Base after a 22-month-old child was found deceased. A resulting investigation confirmed that Klapheke died from serious bodily injury following extreme neglect. The child's two siblings were equally neglected but survived the terrible circumstances. Tiffany Klapheke was arrested and eventually sentenced to 30 years in prison by a Taylor County jury. During this investigation, Abilene detectives had grave concerns about the level of cooperation by local CPS supervisors. Eventually, enough evidence of wrongdoing was brought to police administration's attention, and a criminal investigation into these matters was initiated. A search warrant was executed at the Abilene CPS office on October 16th of 2012 in furtherance of tampering with physical evidence offense as defined in Penal Code 37.09. This is a third-degree felony, which carries a maximum of 10 years confinement and no more than a $10,000 fine. In November 2012, Judge Lee Hamilton appointed a special prosecutor to assist with this case. Assistant District Attorney Mark Parker of McLennan County, which is in Waco, has worked alongside my department to bring this investigation to a grand jury. ADA Parker contacted me on July 15th and indicated he would present the investigation to a Taylor County grand jury on July 17th. That occurred, and the grand jury returned a sealed felony indictment. On July 26th at 1:10 p.m., Martha, a.k.a. Bitt Whitaker, self-surrendered at the Taylor County Jail. She was charged with third-degree felony tampering with physical evidence and was subsequently released on a $1,000 surety bond. ADA Parker will continue the prosecution of this case and may bring additional charges against other persons. Family Code Section 261.3011 mandates that CPS collaborate with law enforcement agencies. We do not believe that happened with the Klapheke investigation, and we will continue to work with the special prosecutor. CPS Commissioner John Specia was notified of this arrest over the weekend. Do you have any questions related to this recent arrest?
Was that the only CPS suspect, I don't know what to call him, a person of interest that they looked at as far as indicting, or were the other two also?
I can only confirm that we asked the special prosecutor to consider criminal charges against 3 CPS supervisors. He continues to work with the Taylor County grand jury and will work through the process, and he will ultimately decide, along with the grand jury, whether additional charges and additional persons are actually sought.
What specific, you said you were not happy with the level of cooperation you received. What specific problems or lack of cooperation? Can you elaborate on that?
In the initial stages of the investigation regarding Tiffany Klapheke's involvement in the extreme neglect of her own children, we needed documents that would help steer the investigation for all persons involved. Those documents were not immediately given, even after numerous requests.
When you say not immediately given, we're talking days or we're talking weeks?
I'm not going to get into the specifics.
So you're not able to speak to whether McDaniel and Denny, whether cases have already been presented or whether they will in the future?
I know that the Assistant District Attorney Mark Parker, the special prosecutor appointed by Judge Hamilton, will work closely with the Taylor County grand jury, and he will present his findings in respect to all 3.
Is there any information on what kind of evidence? Is it just related to the documents that weren't given? That's what the charges were filed on? Is there more evidence that might have been tampered with or moved or changed or something?
I think the best way to answer your question is this was probably one of the most extensive criminal investigations we've done in recent history. There are volumes of investigative products, so to speak, that would indicate fairly systemic abuse by CPS supervisors in providing information to law enforcement, which in my opinion obviously violates the family code and the requirement that they actually collaborate with us. So it is not specific to just a couple of documents. In fact, I would say it would As it relates to the 3 that we asked for consideration of, it was systemic.
Should the community be worried about such systemic problems in this government agency?
I think the community was worried, and rightfully so. I know that the Child Protective Services has a new commissioner. We have worked with the new commissioner, John Spicio, very carefully. He has actually come to Abilene and visited with us. I'm very encouraged by some of the recent changes, recent being defined probably in the last 18 months, that have occurred locally with Child Protective Services. I can tell you that in probably the last 12, maybe even 18 months, we've had a fantastic working relationship with CPS moving forward.
Are the other 2 people who were being investigated initially, Barbara McDaniel and Gretchen Denny, are they still in the area? Do you know their status? I know one is still working with CPS.
I honestly do not know if they still reside in Abilene.
Prior to the Klapheke case, was there other previous incidences with CPS that should have been of concern?
Yes, but I'm not going to go into any great detail regarding that. That's ultimately going to have to be prosecuted by the special prosecutor.
Does this bring into question any past cases that these CPS workers worked on?
That would probably be a question best addressed to the CPS commissioner.
So when we say tampering with evidence, it's after the fact. It's nothing that would have prevented or could something have been changed in this case?
I would dare say that that's going to be a great question that should be asked during time of prosecution.
What exactly is tampering with evidence? What all types of things is that?
Tampering can involve both the physical destruction of or the actual withholding of. So in other words, when you hear the concept of tampering, you don't have to physically manipulate and alter it. You can in fact withhold that information. And basically we would submit to you that the tampering charge is predicated on the fact that we asked for things repeatedly to which we would not receive them or would eventually receive them, which seriously derailed our criminal investigation into a very serious matter.
Do you feel that any documents or pictures were altered in any way when they were given to you?
I think that will ultimately come out during prosecution.
What would be the rationale for them to tamper with documents?
Your question begs to speak to motive, and I'm reluctant to speak to their motives. I'm only going to speak as it relates to what we know for the investigation.
Were there also pictures that you needed that you did not receive?
There was a vast volume of workload that we needed that we asked for, of which pictures probably would have been a part of. All right.
Do you feel like this is ultimately going to be something that progresses the CPS system here? This arrest, maybe the spotlight on it?
Well, as it relates to, numerous changes were made locally and both also at the state level. Since those changes have been made, we've had a fantastic working relationship with CPS. So I would say that this recent arrest shouldn't really have any bearing on the functionality of CPS today, because CPS today is remarkably different than it was in August of 2012.
With that said, are you saying they made the appropriate changes to, for lack of better terms, clean up their act?
I can simply say that we have not experienced any of the types of what I would consider criminal abuse moving forward.
Was that a big problem before the Klapheke happened?
It kind of begs to the same question that she asked, and I think that's all going to come out during times of prosecution. All right. Well, thank you all for coming here today. As you can see, we've had an incredibly busy weekend. I'd be remiss if I didn't tell our community, please remember, you're the first line of defense against crime. We need your help. So, thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
We stand for good.
All right, there we go. That was Abilene Police Chief Stan Standridge there wrapping up a live press conference going on downtown at the Law Enforcement Center, and he's updating all of us on basically three major stories developing here over the weekend, which we all know is pretty uncommon for Abilene to have so much developing over a weekend. But that last case he was talking about there, I'll give you a little bit update on what he was saying. Basically, we had Bitt Whitaker self-surrendering herself over the weekend after a sealed indictment came out showing that she had been indicted by a grand jury here. I believe he said July 17th. What we're learning in that case, you may have heard of him referring to two other individuals, so a total of three. And what's happening there is that since the Tiffany Klapheke child neglect case came out in August of 2012, there were three CPS supervisors in question about their role and what they did and whether or not they were being forthcoming with evidence with authorities. And what we've learned from what he said, it appears that that indictment appears to only be involving Bitt Whitaker at this point in time, and that there does not appear to be an indictment down for Gretchen Denny and Barbara McDaniel, the other two individuals that have been in question in the past 2 years here. He was commenting there, Chief Standridge, that apparently the DA in the case and also the grand jury are currently working together and deciding whether or not there will be an indictment coming down on those other two individuals. So again, saying that Bitt Whitaker had self-surrendered over the weekend, since bonded out. And that's where they are on that case. He said, he was saying, quote, this has been the most extensive criminal investigation and he believes to be APD's history. And also that as a police department, they're seeing that there are evidence, in their opinion, of systemic abuse in CPS up until that time. But he says right now that they have a great working relationship with CPS as they continue to see what happened and led up to that, the death of Tamron Klapheke, the 22-month-old little girl who died as a result of severe neglect inside a home at Dyess Air Force Base. But also with that, we were hearing the latest on the Grove incident that happened over the weekend. You're seeing there, Braid Blinks there. She's down at the